Your Royal Highness, thanks for the privilege of your company, and welcome to GTV and GTV Sports Plus.
Thank you.
I'm a little curious. You are the Agbegumefia of the Sogle traditional state. You're also the president of the National House of Chiefs, also the president of SARS, SAS, serving on a number of boards, also the founder of Africa World. So I'm just curious, with all these tight schedules, how do you find time for football? How did you come into football?
Well, thank you very much. Football is a passion.
All right.
As a kid, I played football. You know,
What position were you playing?
I was a utility player.
I was a right back. We call it number 2.
Okay. So as a kid, whenever there was a need, that was where I played.
Wow.
You know, yes. You know, it's unfortunate I couldn't participate actively in playing beyond the very early years in secondary school. Yeah. And I developed the love for Accra House of Oak. You know, I was born a twin. Incidentally, my twin brother was a Kotoko fan. And I was also folk.
I see.
So we had our arguments, you know, in the locality, a lot of Hearts fans and then the Kotoko fans right at home. I mean, but that interest has persisted over all the years until about the middle of the early 2000s. I was invited to join the board. So very early I was invited to join the board. And I remember in those days, we have our board meetings, some of them at the Sneakers house.
Who were some of the guys you stayed on with the board at the time?
Oh, Ernest Thompson was there, Isaac was there, you know, Alajias and others were there. But I withdrew very early because I didn't like certain approaches to doing things. That was why I felt honored when I was invited again to join the board. So I thought, wow, if these guys, after I had left unceremoniously, got me back in again, it must be the case that they saw something in me that, you know, was relevant. So I gladly accepted to join the board. And what about the same time or just before, Ernest Thompson, who was my sixth form colleague at La Boy Secondary School, spoke to me about the plan to float the shares of Accra House of Oak.
Yeah.
So when I joined the board the second time, it was top on the agenda. The idea of floating shares of Accra House of Oak. So Accra House of Oak, through share holder support, could become a self-sustained organization financially. And I thought at the time, you know, novel that the idea was, I thought it was still great and was going to redefine the future for Accra House of Oak. And I found it very exciting.
Can you take us through the flotation? Because as you pointed out, at that time, it was a very, very popular refrain. Everybody thought once we floated shares, we're going to resolve all the financial problems of the team. And then you ended up being the majority shareholder. How did it come about? And who are the other members of the other shareholders?
Okay, in the latter part of the first decade of this century, I mean before 2010, thereabout, while I was on the board, the decision was taken very firmly to do a public flotation of Accra House of Oak shares. You know that before then, Accra House of Oak, like any of the so-called traditional clubs, were virtually owned by nobody. Even though prior to that, and in response to the government of the day's desire for professionalism, Accra House of Oak was incorporated as a limited liability company, but it was still run as though it was not owned by anybody. Indeed, that early allocation of shares of Accra House of Oak was just meant to facilitate the transition between a communally owned club or a club owned by nobody and a club owned by a defined body of shareholders. Right. So there were a few shares at the time. I remember Honorable Ato Ahoy was a small shareholder, the late Professor Mills was a small shareholder, and so was the late Emisata. They were all shareholders, you know. But the flotation was actually what launched HeartsofOak as a serious limited liability company, but public. You see, you know, the difference between private and public company is the fact that in one case, as a public company, shares are freely transferable. You know, so it transfers between a private limited liability company to a public company. Share ownership itself was a novel idea, and more so, share ownership in a football company, which companies hardly made money. Then it made, you know, for a very, very difficult flotation. So not too surprisingly, the flotation was heading for a failure, where failure meant that the minimum that we committed to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the regulator, as the amount that we wanted to raise for HeartsofOak, we were not going to meet that target. Under the rules, if you plan a flotation of shares and you define a certain minimum amount of money you must raise to ensure the execution of the agenda, if you fail to raise that minimum, okay, the thinking is that you would likely misuse the limited money you've raised. So once you've raised the minimum, you are supposed to return all the money to shareholders. So that was the dilemma HeartsofOak found itself in. We never reached the minimum. So the prospect of having to return my shareholders was staring us in the face. It meant, one, failure on the part of SAS and the disgrace that comes with it, public professional disgrace that comes with it. But it also meant more importantly, putting HeartsofOak in an even worse situation, having spent money to pay legal fees, filing fees, and also on the promotion of the shares. So we decided to step in. So HeartsofOak could retain the monies that came in, which meant that we needed to invest enough to ensure the minimum that HeartsofOak committed to raising was raised.
So that's how I became the majority shareholder?
Yes, through my two companies, SAS and Strategic Initiatives Limited, the two of which own almost 70% of HeartsofOak.
And with the benefit of hindsight, would you say that it was the right decision for the team to float shares?
It was the right decision, and if I had a chance to be part of it again, I would still recommend it as the right way to go. In company evolution, you typically move from a sole proprietorship, one-man company, where the fortunes of the company depended upon your ability, both managerial and financial. But when the company grows and needs a bigger market, you want to admit other people. The next step will normally be a partnership. You bring in other partners to bring in more money, more expertise. But there's a limit to how many partners you can have under law. So before you can add more people to your shareholding, in particular, before you can, go past 20, you need to become a limited company. Limited company, again, there are still restrictions. If you're a private limited company, you can't have more than 50 members. So again, you can only appeal to 50 members when you want to raise more money. If you needed more money, you have to go public flotation. You see, and if you take your mind or cast your mind around Africa, many of the so-called traditional clubs are dead. Nigeria, the teams that we used to win in those days, Shooting Stars, Enugu Rangers, where are they? Right. Come to Ghana, Cornerstones, Venomous Vipers, BA United, NS, where are they? When you look at the Premier League today, which are the traditional clubs still are there, that are still there? Hearts, Kotoko, Ebusua Dwarfs. Most of the others have defined ownerships or ownership structures. And that meant goal congruence between owners and managers. Commitment to the same objective, okay? Where you have a typical traditional club, virtually owned by nobody. People came in who probably may not necessarily have the same objectives as an organization. But you see that for the emerging new clubs in Ghana, we know the owners are managing. So you can see that there is that goal congruence, okay? On the other hand, with the traditional clubs, there's always a moral hazard issue that you put people in positions for them to do A, B, C, but they end up doing X, Y, Z. That's a moral hazard issue. So I think that the share flotation was a good decision. Otherwise, the only alternative between share flotation and the traditional structure is to have a company owned by just a few, okay? Instead of a company owned by a few, I'd rather the company's ownership is open to the public, okay? So the alternative to me, as far as I'm concerned, okay, is to remain a traditional club owned by the community, effectively owned by nobody.
So with this system, Your Royal Highness, as you as the majority shareholder, with this structure, are there still opportunities for people to get involved in terms of purchasing shares?
Well, the good news is that we want to float more shares.
Okay.
So when I hear people talking about, oh, they need to float more shares, it sounds like music to my ears. You see, we would want to raise more money, okay, and therefore be able to make Accra Suffolk financially stronger. So we intend to float shares. We would have done that a lot earlier, even before this time, but for the need to put in certain structures, okay, strength administration, provide certain infrastructure for the company before doing that to make it more attractive. So certainly we intend to float more shares. Indeed, at the last shareholders meeting, the announcement was made to wide applause, you know. I am always for cooperation. That's why I realized that all the companies that I promoted after I started SAS have been joint ventures or company that I own with others. When I set out to do Africa World Airlines, I couldn't fund it all by myself. I knew nothing about aviation, so I brought in others. And you see, Africa World has been doing very well. As Ogre Power, again, I thought about getting into power. I needed people who had money, who had technology. The same is what I bring to Accra Suffolk. It's not good enough, as far as I'm concerned, to own something alone. When you own it alone, the survival of that thing depends only on you. Even maybe the life of that thing depends on you. Accra Suffolk, solid club, 108-year-old club, has to survive centuries. So for me, having more people in, best idea. And you realize that when we do our next flotation, subject to enough interest in it, we can even give up some of our percentage holding, okay? That's a challenge to Accra Suffolk fans who said they want the shares. They better get ready because we'll float it big time. We should be raising, in my estimation, a minimum of 40 million cedis in our next flotation. So they should be ready.
So I just want to promise you, if I bring 20 million, I'll be a shareholder.
You are so much welcome.
I'm going to get my 20 million very ready.
Good news for me. Good. We need to share the burden,
That's right.
the burden of funding the company, okay? Spread risk, that's what it is.
So as you rightly pointed out, in the past, you didn't have a definitive or defined ownership. Now it's definitive. So what has been the relationship between you and the supporters? I mean, clearly, without the supporters, it's going to be very easy, difficult for the club to survive. So what has been the relationship between the supporters and the new ownership?
I have always identified supporters as an important stakeholder, okay, in the affairs of any sports organization. Hearts of Oak being no exception. Okay? That was why, even though our regulations as a company did not make room for supporter participation at the board level, I personally invited the NCC to nominate someone to represent them on the board.
As a national chapter committee?
Yes, right. To allow for communication between the owners, in fact, the board, right, and the supporters, to allow for an opportunity for the fans to be able to channel their views to the board and therefore to the owners. Secondly, along the line, I came up with the idea of a Hearts of Oak fan-based mobilization. We made the first attempt, and we decided to form an executive club, which is in existence, not playing necessarily the role that we wanted it to play anyway. The fan-based one, the management could not execute. We came up with the iconic Hearts program, if you recall. That was meant for the same purpose. We're taking a more serious approach to it now using technology. So very soon we'll be launching our platform through which fans could register. It's good for us as a club. Why is it good? Then we can stop the speculation and say that Hearts has so many people as a fan base. You go to sponsors, they want to know what your fan base is. And we always say, wow, we have maybe 8 million supporters. They want the data, and it's not there. Okay? So it's good for the club. It's good for the fans as well. You can prove your membership. On our website, there would be a link to that database. When somebody wants to prove he's a member of Hearts of Oak fan base, he must have his name in there. So all of that will happen. So we'll be nurturing very aggressively, strengthening of the relation between the fans and then the board, management, and ownership of the club.
Well, I'm really excited hearing that, but I'm sure you must have heard this criticism before, that your relationship with some of the old management members, and the fact that whether you get in touch with them, maybe to tap their brain as to what they did right and wrong during their tenure when the club chalked a lot of successes. So I'm just curious whether...
You recall I told you that whereas the whole board at the time, before the flotation, voted for flotation, along the way, a few people were developing cold feet. Maybe they feared a loss of control. Maybe they feared a loss of the opportunities that they used to have, okay? And that itself hurt the outcome of the flotation. The difficulty started when the same board voted to limit board membership to 11, down from 25, which was where it was. 11 board membership meant some people were going to lose their positions, because that's what the rule says. The regulation says 11 members. 25 definitely had to come down to 11. So that created the initial problems.
So the rumor that you are tyrannical and dictatorial and doesn't accommodate views, they are all lies.
Maybe the best people you talk to, I would say at this point, the executives of other Premier League clubs who have come to know me as we work together to help normalization committee, as we work together to promote the independence or autonomy of the Ghana Premier League. Okay, they are the best people to judge. They are the people who have nominated me to represent them on the 5-man committee. If I were what you had heard, why would they? Why would they? All the names that matter, the people we normally call as the football people, they've been part of all the meetings that we've held since when the revelations from Anas led to the truncation of that league. Okay, we've had several meetings. I didn't choose myself as a chairman. They made me chairman. Okay, when the 5-man committee was supposed to set up, they said, "Hey, Togbe, You must represent us. When we were in that meeting, I was the first one they nominated. You can bet if I were that tyrannical, dictatorial, why would they want me? You see what I'm saying? If I were dictatorial, why would I be president of the House of Chiefs? Why would I be president of the House of Chiefs? When I entered the House of Chiefs in 2005, first election 2008, my colleagues brought the form for me to fill. Togbe, you are going to be our leader. After my 8-year term, I became leader at the National House of Chiefs. If I were that dictatorial, why would all these people, want me to lead them? But again, the best evidence for you is my relationship with the members of the Ghana Premier League, a family who have met under my leadership for about a year and a half, prior to nominating me to represent them at the 5-man committee.
I think it's a point well made. I just wanted you to have the opportunity to clarify some of these things. But with these laudable ideas about Hearts of Oak, what is the end game? What is the grand vision you have for the club?
Some of the things I want to do for Hearts of Oak, I'm telling you without any attempt to really exaggerate. And I'll do it without any apologies, or I won't be ashamed to say it. And I won't fear to say it. The whole objective is to make Hearts of Oak the preeminent club in Africa. We want to build a club that becomes a reference point across the continent in terms of what a modern club should look like. Personally, I don't like the idea of players leaving Hearts of Oak and going to Sudan, or going to Guinea, or going to Congo. Why should it be? We want to compete with all the others, and we want to really be the magnet that will attract players from across the continent. Yeah. So we want to make Hearts of Oak the preeminent club, where preeminence, of course, is not just about name. It's about winning trophies at that level, okay? Having organizational structures and systems that are admired, okay? Having facilities that are celebrated. Basically, that's what we want to be. And it's unfortunate. It's not been an easy journey, because in today's world, image is very important, okay? The tragedy for Hearts of Oak has been that while we try to do the right things, there were people out there who try to spread negativity. A lot of them concocted. It is not good for the club. It's not easy to build in an environment like that. The good news is that many are becoming appreciative of what we've been trying to do. So you bear with me, the noise has gone down. And it will go down further. Hopefully, next week we'll hit the ground and start building Pobiman.
Yeah. I was going to ask
after many years.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Pobiman, as you said, several years. It was supposed to be the dream project of Hearts of Oak. Where are you at the moment, and where do you want to get to with the Pobiman project?
Let me continue from where I stopped and link it up to this. To make Hearts of Oak the preeminent club in Africa, to make Hearts of Oak a reference point, okay, in terms of what a good club, should look like. We have many things we want to do. Of course, the starting point is governance and administration, okay? We want to build the kind of governance system backed by the administrative structures, procedures, and etc. that will enable us to propel us to preeminence, and that we are on course to achieving, okay? What we want is to be successful on the field. So that brings the technical aspect. We want to be successful financially, okay? To be successful technically, we need the infrastructure, and that's where Pobiman comes in, okay? We have done everything that we need to do, okay, for the Pobiman project to start. We have signed a contract with our Turkish contractors who are building the structures. This is supposed to be a prefab technology. They are building the structures in Turkey. A local contractor under Turkish supervision will be building the foundation. Okay, as I said, we'll start digging the ground from next week. The manufacturing process in Turkey will take maximum 3 months. Then shipment, installation, maximum another 2 months. So we talk about 5 months from now to completion. Okay, the local work will take maximum 2.5 months. They will finish that ahead of the arrival of the panels and etc. From Turkey. So we are very much on course. All the financial has been arranged with the backing of my company, working with GT Bank on this project. We intend to have a facility that would serve Hearts of Oak, the junior team, Auroras, the second team, and the juvenile side, Royal Oaks. So this facility is supposed to, at any one time, be capable of accommodating all the players. Of course, the young ones will be there. The Auroras folks will be there. We expect it to serve more than Hearts of Oak. It can serve the nation. The Black Stars could become there if there's a need. It will serve international teams when they come to play in Ghana. Both club sides and national sides can be there. It can serve corporate Ghana. Those of them who may want a place where they can spend a weekend and have games. Because apart from the structures, we'll have, 3 full-size pitches and then 2, smaller pitches, making 3 plus 2, 5. Of course, 2 being small pitches. Later, we expect to add tennis courts, volleyball courts.
Some swimming pools.
Swimming pool, of course, is part of, they're all in the plan, so that we have a facility that can serve Hearts of Oak, serve the nation in times of need, serve international club sides, national teams, serve the corporate world. It's a very laudable dream.
I can't wait for the completion of it, man. I was privileged to be in Côte d'Ivoire years back. ASEC Mimosa, they have a similar facility where the national team sometimes go to camp. So when you raise the issue of the national team, it just reminded me of what ASEC have in Abidjan. Yeah. But having invested so much in Hearts of Oak and with all these plans, Hearts of Oak over the years has been synonymous with successes, with victory, with trophies. How do you feel that over the last a decade, Hearts have been struggling to win notable trophies and compete favorably in Africa?
Well, in terms of competing favorably in Africa, it's become the Ghanaian disease.
That's right.
Since Hearts last won an African competition, no club has.
That's right.
Sometimes when people argue, they seem to forget that. Okay? What has eluded us relative to others in Ghana is not international success, it's the local success. We are trying to address all of them. Okay? When you look at our current recruitment, you see that it is with serious intentions. We have Lawali, in the team who is a full Niger international. We have Eric Dizan from Ivory Coast. We have Ovuka from Congo. We've added Danjuma, from Nigeria. We are building a solid team. We want a team that dominates Africa. What it means is that when it comes to performing the market, we must be the likes of Tip Mazembe. We have to challenge the North Africans. So, as I said again, the fact that we've been eluded, SARS eluded in Africa, is a Ghanaian disease. Okay? We are trying to, fight both that and also performance locally. Before we can get to Africa, we must win locally. So we are building a team that can be all conquering locally and also very much the same, conquering continentally. It's the only way we can achieve our objectives. It's been a bit difficult in the past, part of it because too much negativity, so that we have not been able, for example, to attract the needed sponsorship because there was too much noise about Accra Folk. Noise, a lot of it coming from people who thought that the new system was naturally excluding some of the past ways. Remember those days, ways and means. I came in and I professed, non-belief from the word go in ways and means. Of course, Anas has proved my kind of approach right.
The reliance on juju.
The reliance on juju, the reliance on influencing referees and all of that.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? People tried it so many times when I came. They've gotten to know me. So nobody calls me again about having to see a referee or having to, see a juju man. When I first came in, maybe they thought it was a matter of time, and then I could be assimilated into the practice. But they've come to see that Togbe is unwavering when it comes to those matters. You see, so I would say that the past perception is giving way to the new. You see what I'm saying? And you attest to the fact that the noises have gone down. There are a few ugly ones here every once in a while, but it's become so typical of us as Ghanaians. Sometimes we try to pull, those who are doing well down. So sometimes we invent stories where there is even none. I mean, the good news is that when it comes to my leadership, you can never say that Togbe took money to go and do it. Won't happen. You see what I'm saying? I bring the money, others spend it. When there has to be an accounting for the money, they have to account for it, not me. So I think that we are on a very, very good path. Building our governance system, administrative systems, okay, building the infrastructure. Infrastructure alone does not do the trick. We need people. We strengthen the technical team, okay. I did mention that we have someone coming in to manage Tobyman, okay, and build satellite academies in some few countries, okay. We're going to strengthen the technical team by the addition of a technical director who would supervise work at Hearts level, coordinate really, Hearts, Auras, and Royal Oaks, okay. Beyond governance, administration, technical, infrastructure, of course, we are strengthening the team itself, the playing body. That's the most important asset. And we're going to do that all down to the juvenile level. The whole idea is to catch the gems, If you watch the English Premier League, one of the biggest surprises this season, Sheffield United. Read about their recruitment strategy. They aim to discover gems in the football community. So with a small budget, they are rubbing shoulders with the likes of Arsenal, Tottenham, and etc. So we'll back all of this with a solid recruitment policy that will try to identify precocious talents. You see what I'm saying? That will not only help us, but eventually help Ghana football.
Yeah, you're right, Hannes. You touch a very important point, a point I find very interesting, and it's about the fact that if us are going to lose players, they shouldn't be losing players to Sudan, to Guinea, as Patrick Razak left. What it also means is that we have to be paying our players fees that would discourage them from leaving. So what would you say would be the remuneration level of our players and where it should be to hold the exodus?
Okay. When people talk remuneration of our players, sometimes the arguments are not very sincere or honest. Okay? You always have to juxtapose your arguments against the environment. The argument must fit the environment. You see what I'm saying? That is not to support mediocrity. There is no profession here in Ghana that would say that, we are as well paid as our counterparts in Europe or in America. That is the basic truth. Okay? But I agree with you. It becomes very sad when your counterparts in African countries are doing better. Okay? But then we also have to accept that Ghana football has declined relative to our peers in Africa. It's not only at the club level that we failed. Even at the national level, we have not done as well as we used to do. Okay? Some of the causal factors were laid bare in the ANAS investigation and all of that. Okay? Ghana football can only become better. The prevalence of the negativity, the prevalence of negative actions and what have you, the ways and means, bad referee and all of that, they don't make for a good environment in which you can build. Okay? Rather than attract sponsorship, those activities repel sponsorship. You see what I'm saying? We need a good environment, a good commercial environment, for the clubs to be able to develop the wherewithal to pay players very well. That is why I said for Hearts of Oak, beyond the governance, administrative, technical, infrastructural ideas, we look at the commercial and marketing. I agree that if we have to compete with a TP Mazembe, we got to pay well. And trust me, Hearts is in the process of doing that. There have been a few tappings of some of our players by the competition in Africa. We invited them. Let's talk. We don't want to lose a player to another African country. I hope that unless the unexpected comes, partly why we're going to do more flotation to bring in more resources, we'll strengthen our commercial activities, our market activities, and etc. And we'll actually also be developing programs that would attract the fans to the stadium, so that we are increasing our ticketing revenue, increasing what comes in by way of sponsorship, various marketing activities, merchandise, and etc. All of these are receiving attention. Again, the ultimate is to make Hearts of Oak preeminent, make Hearts of Oak a reference point. We can't be that when we are losing players to, teams that probably would appear better managed in Africa. No, we want to compete with those teams. Okay, someone like Lawali, he came from Al-Marek, Sudan. Some of our players have led them gone there too. That's right. So for us, that's one important, success. We have players who are being sought by Team Mazembe. We want to keep them in here. We will be very competitive on all fronts. We will seek to retain the best talent. Okay, and you know that since we have been involved in Hearts of Oak has not been like a selling club. It does not mean that will stop any player from pursuing his dreams. But I would rather a Hearts of Oak player leaves us and goes to Europe or even China than to a fellow African country. That should soon be a matter of the past. We should get players from them.
That's right. Point well made. I'm excited to hear that. So the COVID-19 pandemic has brought clearly untold hardship to most clubs in this country. And, recently the FA, led by the new boss, Kedo Kreku, suggested that it would be important for government to come to the aid of the clubs in terms of helping with the stimulus package. Is this something you subscribe to?
Well, first of all, let me start by acknowledging the good work that Kurt and his team are doing. Okay. It makes some of us see a very bright outlook for Ghana football. And I would say that they deserve our fullest support. Okay? In terms of government support, all over the world, governments have stepped in to support wherever there have been difficulties. Is what I'm saying. What we are going through today is not unique to Ghana. The havoc it has done to our football is what we've seen all over the world. And not only football as a sector, virtually all sectors. Aviation, is suffering. Almost every sector has suffered. We've seen people queue up, millions of people queue up for unemployment checks in America of all countries. I mean, people in America need bailout. People in England, Europe need bailout. How much more those of us here? I think that football being such an important sector, government needs to step in. It's so sad that the contribution of football to our economy is not well appreciated. That's why I'm advocating for studies that would define the place of football in our economy. Okay? I've studied, the football economy of many countries. And I'm impressed that in many countries, they can tell in dollar terms, in pound terms, the size of the football sector. We need to do that in this country. If that were the case, it would have made government a lot more appreciative. Okay? Football does not only provide income to those working in the sector, does not only provide income to players, okay, but indirect employment to all who support the sector in all kinds of ways. Vendors of food, vendors of water, etc., etc.
Hotels and all that.
Hotels, they are all part, we need to quantify all of that. And hey, football can do a lot of good to our image. When I travel out of Ghana, people talk about Ghana Cocoa. They talk about some of our most outstanding players. When they are from Ghana, then they mention a player's name. If football were not that important, why would every country take participation in Africa Club competition, Africa Nations Cup competition, World Cup competition? Why people take it so seriously? You see, big tournaments bring so much tourism. Put the country, up there. And again, as I said, there are not many sectors that beat sports when it comes to potential to advertise your country, to put on a map. So given the importance of the sector, okay, in terms of bringing people, tourism, generating income, helping the country's image and visibility, the sector deserves some support from government during this very difficult time, And I will support Kurt and his team in all their efforts to win government support. And the good news is that government has been listening to them, which is very good. Right. So those of us who are in the sector are looking forward to the good news. All right. We hope it will come sooner than later.
Right. Now, the last question. The Bundesliga started several weeks back. The Premiership is going to start next week. Quite a few of the leagues outside are beginning to ease up and start. Is it your view that the Ghana Premier League should start?
Yes, we should start. Okay. We should start subject to putting in all the precautions. And I know that Kurt and his team have already defined, they put up a laundry list of things that we would do in taking the precautions that must be taken to ensure that the resumption of football does not work counter to all of what government is doing to tame the COVID pandemic. I think that as soon as possible, we should allow players to start training in small groups, and then we should be able to allow football to start again, subject to controlling the crowds, social distancing, and all of that. The COVID situation in England is so bad. In UK, in Spain, is so bad. Even though the trends are down in terms of but they are starting. Ours is not as bad. The only thing one can say is that maybe they have now developed a bigger capacity, maybe just maybe, to respond if there should be any spikes and all of that. But the level of the pandemic in our country, I think, it's not such as would want us to be too worried about the consequences. Okay, should football resume? And again, though, it must be subject to ensuring that the necessary protocols are observed. So if you ask me, yes, we should be able to start football, right, subject to put in place all the necessary preventive measures.
Your Highness, your final words.
Okay. Well, I would want to assure, in particular, Hearts fans that everything that we are trying to do is about making Hearts great. And when I think about Hearts, I'm thinking about my country. I always have a very open attitude to things. I know that Hearts cannot succeed if the whole country does not do well. That's why, again, I said that the facility at Pobiman will be open to the national team, to others who want to enjoy those facilities. But I want the fans to know that we love Hearts as much as they do, if not more.
Okay.
We have a lot at stake, not only as fans, but as shareholders and as directors. They should rest assured that we want to do the best for Hearts as our contribution towards, the sector as a whole in the country, and also contribution to building Ghana football, restoring the glory that Ghana football was identified with. So we are trying to make Hearts great, restore the glory, but also contribute to restoring the glory of Ghana football. And those who have been part of the meetings that we had, on the Ghana Premier League would attest to the fact that, it's all about the common good. It can't be good for only Hearts. It has to be good for all of us so that we can all profit from the collective, success. But I promise we will do whatever it takes to put Hearts up there, and by extension, to help football in Ghana.
So we just, before coming, the Hearts fans who knew I was coming here pushed me very strongly. There's a question I want to ask. Their Hearts bus.
Oh, we had a bus. It's the COVID.
The COVID.
In fact, the bus that we had, the thing what was supposed to provide an emergency door, and that was being worked on. Okay. But for COVID, they would have been seeing.
So very soon we're going to see the new bus.
Almost sooner than soon.
Sooner than
No, we beyond that. At the last one of the board meetings, I did talk about another bus. Okay. So beyond the big bus, I wanted to have a smaller bus that can take executives, okay, has board management to matches out of Accra. But again, I also thought that the big bus probably is too much to be running, inner city. Okay. So we need a supporting small bus, okay, for the intercity, and that same bus can be the one that will take executives. So again, what I'm saying is that many people cannot imagine where we want to take us to. Maybe they are thinking about here. We are thinking about there. We only need their support, genuine support. Okay? They need to have faith in the leadership and faith in the intentions of leadership and learn their unflinching support. And they will see that the smiles will be back. People say we change coaches. Well, sometimes that's a reflection of the ambition of the club. Go to the history and see how many coaches Real Madrid has had in the last 15 years. Just check it when you go. How many coaches has Real Madrid had within the last 15 years? Okay? So we are doing the best we can. And they should also believe that in the board, there's a lot of talent. We have the likes of Nyauta Meklo, who has been in former administration at all the levels, from Accra Folk to the FA. Okay? So we would make it. But the one other thing that we all should expect is that we'll be strengthening our board. We'll be strengthening the board to reflect the kind of ambitions that I've presented to you, and so that we can restore our club to winning ways and also launch us in grand style back onto the continent.
Thanks so much. It sounds like a lecture at the Yale
At Yale Business School.
At the Yale Business School, where you were.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Togbe. Arrows, arrows, arrows.